Most people know nuts are supposed to be good for them, but the question I get is which ones actually matter? How much do I need? And does it make a difference if I eat almonds versus walnuts versus a handful of mixed nuts from a can? The answer is yes. And the evidence on specific nuts and seeds is considerably more detailed than most nutrition advice suggests. In 6 minutes, I'm going to rank the top nuts, rank the top seeds, explain the metabolic evidence behind each one, and give you 4 practical rules that actually change how you eat them. Before the rankings, let me make the case for why this food category deserves clinical attention. Nuts and seeds are one of the few foods where the observational data and the randomized trial data align. That is not common in nutrition research. The Umbrella Review, a meta-analysis of meta-analyses published in 2022, found that nut consumption is associated with a 21% lower risk of cardiovascular disease at 4 or more servings per week, a 15% lower diabetes risk for tree nuts specifically, and a 27% lower all-cause mortality in frequent versus rare consumers. That mortality signal is striking. Why does the evidence hold up? Because nuts deliver an unusually dense combination of bioactive nutrients, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, plant protein around 25% of energy, 4 to 11 grams of fiber per 100 grams, antioxidant polyphenols, phytosterols that block cholesterol absorption at the gut wall, and a broad micronutrient profile: vitamin E, folate, magnesium, calcium, selenium. That varies by nut. No other single food category does this in 1 ounce. The rankings: 6 nuts, each with a distinct reason to be on your plate. Number 1, walnuts. Best omega-3 ALA of any nut at 2.5 grams per ounce. They uniquely alter the gut microbiome in favorable ways, the only nut with robust evidence for this. They also show evidence for improving endothelial function and LDL reduction in type 2 diabetics. If you eat 1 nut, eat walnuts. Number 2, almonds. Highest vitamin E at 7.3 milligrams per ounce, nearly half the daily RDA, and the best nut for calcium. RCTs show reduced oxidative stress markers and LDL peroxidation in hyperlipidemic subjects. Best nut for bone health nutrients. Number 3, pistachios. Highest plant sterol content of the common nuts at 61 milligrams per ounce. Plant sterols structurally mimic cholesterol and block its absorption at the gut wall. Pistachios also show the most favorable postprandial glucose response of common nuts, lower glycemic impact than you would expect from their carbohydrate content. Number 4, Brazil nuts, 1 to 2 only. 1 Brazil nut delivers roughly 544 micrograms of selenium. The RDA is 55 micrograms. The tolerable upper limit is 400. 2 Brazil nuts a day is the ceiling. Beyond that, chronically, you risk selenium toxicity, hair loss, peripheral neuropathy. 1 to 2 nuts, not a handful. 5 and 6, cashews for iron, zinc, and magnesium with the lowest fat content of tree nuts. Macadamias for the highest monounsaturated fat, but lower protein and fiber than the top tier. Seeds, pound for pound, more nutrient dense than most nuts, and dramatically underused. Number 1, chia seeds, 2 to 3 times the ALA of walnuts per gram. 4 grams of fiber per tablespoon, including a significant soluble fiber fraction that improves glucose and lipid responses. Also a meaningful source of calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and iron from a seed. 1 to 2 tablespoons daily is the clinical dose. Number 2, flax seeds. The richest lignin source of any food. Lignins are phytoestrogens with antioxidant and potential anti-cancer properties, particularly for breast and colon cancer. Critical point: whole flax seeds pass through your GI tract largely intact. You need to eat them ground for bioavailability. Add ground flax to oatmeal, yogurt, or a smoothie. Number 3, hemp seeds. The only seed with a complete amino acid profile, comparable to animal protein. 10 grams of protein per tablespoon plus omega-3 ALA and gamma-linolenic acid with anti-inflammatory properties. The protein story on hemp is underappreciated. 4 and 5, pumpkin seeds for magnesium and zinc, 156 milligrams of magnesium per ounce, which is nearly 40% of the daily RDA. Sesame seeds for sesamin and sesamol, lignins with demonstrated antioxidant activity in clinical trials, and a surprisingly high calcium content. The cardiovascular evidence deserves a dedicated moment. The pre-dimed trial, 7,447 participants, New England Journal of Medicine 2013, compared a Mediterranean diet supplemented with mixed nuts versus a low-fat control diet. The nut group had 30% fewer major cardiovascular events. That is landmark data. Mechanistically, randomized clinical trials consistently show nuts lower LDL cholesterol by roughly 5%. They improve HDL. They reduce blood pressure, partly through magnesium and L-arginine content. L-arginine is the precursor to nitric oxide, which drives vascular dilation. Walnuts specifically improve endothelial function in type 2 diabetics. And the polyphenol and fiber content reduces inflammatory markers, CRP, IL-6, TNF-alpha, across multiple meta-analyses. This is not observational confounding. It is mechanistically coherent and replicated in trials. The question I always get, if nuts are 160 to 200 calories per ounce, won't eating them every day cause weight gain? The answer from the clinical trial data is no, and this has been studied carefully. A 2021 meta-analysis of randomized trials found that nut intake does not lead to weight gain, independent of dietary substitution instructions. Several mechanisms explain the paradox. Incomplete fat absorption from the cell walls of nuts, high satiety reducing intake elsewhere, increased thermogenesis from the thermic effect of protein and fat, and dietary compensation later in the day. On glycemic control, tree nuts are associated with a 15% lower diabetes risk. Pistachios show the most favorable postprandial glucose effect. Almonds eaten before a meal blunt the subsequent glucose spike. The fiber and fat content slows carbohydrate absorption, which matters if you're eating nuts alongside carbohydrate-containing foods. Lipids, 5% LDL reduction, triglyceride reduction with walnuts and flaxseed, modest HDL increase. Blood pressure, magnesium and L-arginine content is the mechanism. Cashews have the strongest blood pressure data in trials. Inflammation. CRP reduction is consistent across nut meta-analyses, strongest for walnuts and almonds. Cancer and mortality. The 27% reduction in all-cause mortality is the headline number. The 25% lower cancer mortality is an association, not proven causal, but mechanistically plausible through several pathways: antioxidant polyphenols with anti-proliferative properties, prebiotic fiber that generates short-chain fatty acids with anti-tumor signaling, and lignans in flax and sesame that function as phytoestrogens and may have protective effects in hormone-sensitive cancers. I want to be clear, most of the cancer data is observational. Confounding is possible. What I tell patients is that the mechanistic case is strong. The safety profile of nuts and seeds is excellent, and the cardiovascular and metabolic evidence alone is sufficient reason to eat them regularly. The potential cancer benefit is a reasonable additional consideration, not a proven one. 4 rules that actually change how you eat nuts and seeds. Rule 1, mix it up. Don't pick a favorite nut and eat that exclusively. Walnuts for omega-3, almonds for vitamin E and calcium. Pistachios for plant sterols. Brazil nuts for selenium, 1 to 2 only. Variety covers more nutritional ground than loyalty to one nut. A mixed handful is better than a bag of one. Rule 2, grind your flaxseed. Whole flax seeds have a hard outer shell. Your GI tract cannot fully break down. The ALA and lignans are locked inside. Ground flaxseed is the bioavailable form. 1 to 2 tablespoons in oatmeal, yogurt, or a smoothie is the dose. Keep ground flax refrigerated. The good polyunsaturated fats oxidize quickly. Rule 3, use nuts as a substitute, not an addition. The weight paradox holds in studies where nuts replace processed snacks. If you add a handful of nuts to a diet that already has excess calories, you will gain weight. The exchange matters. Nuts for crackers, nuts for chips, nuts instead of a mid-afternoon processed snack. Rule 4, watch the Brazil nut ceiling. 1 to 2 per day for selenium sufficiency, not a handful. The difference between therapeutic selenium intake and toxic selenium intake is narrow, and Brazil nuts sit right at that edge. 1 ounce per day is the evidence-based dose. Raw or dry roasted, plain. High heat roasting oxidizes the good unsaturated fats you are eating the nuts for. Salt adds sodium. Honey or flavoring adds sugar. Plain is the therapeutic form. The summary: a handful a day, variety across nut types, plain and unsalted, grind your flaxseed. The evidence on nuts and seeds is among the most consistent in nutrition science. It holds up across observational studies, trials, and mechanistic research. And the dose is 1 ounce a day. The full article with all cited studies is at kurthongmd.com. If you like the suggestions, subscribe to our channel, share it with a friend, and work nuts into your diet.